Happy Wednesday to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. It's the time of the afternoon where we give you an update on what's happening out in the tropics, and we have a lot of action out there. Fortunately, at this point, nothing that is threatening Southeast Texas or the Houston area right now, but we still have a lot of action out in the Atlantic, so I'm going to update you on the latest with our tropical storm. Of course, we are still tracking our second tropical storm of the season. The first, of course, was Arlene, and now we're tracking Tropical Storm Bret. It has made it very close to the Caribbean Sea, but not quite. It is still off into the Atlantic, but it is getting closer to the Lesser Antilles, and it is becoming more organized. This is Bret on our satellite loop, and you can see those darker colors, the areas of convection starting to kind of get a little bigger and more organized. Still not a hurricane yet, but it is getting stronger, and it will continue to likely strengthen over the next 24 hours as it heads towards the Lesser Antilles. We've got a trio of storms out here. Not only do we have Tropical Storm Bret, but we also have a couple other tropical disturbances that we're monitoring. We've got one here that could become a tropical depression, and we have another coming off of the coast of Africa, and that could become a tropical depression or tropical storm down the road as well. But first, let's talk about exactly what we have right now, and this is Tropical Storm Bret. It is really starting to intensify, and it currently has maximum sustained winds up to 65 miles per hour. Movement is to the west at 15 miles per hour, and that pressure is decreasing. As the tropical system, of course, gets stronger, the pressure usually drops, and the pressure now down to 1,000 millibars. This is the latest advisory that we have for now, and you can see the track of Bret basically moving off to the west around 15 miles per hour. So around 1 p.m. Thursday, still 65 mile per hour winds, a fairly healthy tropical storm, and getting close to Barbados, where we have tropical storm watches there. But we now have a couple of tropical storm warnings over towards St. Lucia in the eastern Caribbean, where we do have the potential for tropical storm force winds and some heavy rain that could lead to some flooding issues. Notice by Friday afternoon, it is pushing south of Puerto Rico with 60 mile per hour winds, and then by Saturday afternoon, it is weakening as it pushes into the central to western Caribbean down to 45 miles per hour. Most of the models have this really weakening even more and kind of fizzling out, falling apart as we go into the second half of the weekend. But I want to zoom in and show you where we do have that tropical storm warning there. That is right around St. Lucia. Tropical storm watches for Barbados. So certainly some issues could still be dealt with or felt from this system as it moves to the west, because it is going to still bring some heavy rain and also that potential for the tropical storm force winds. So flooding definitely still a possibility. But the good news for us is it's expected to weaken long before it would reach Southeast Texas, so I don't think we'll have any issues from Tropical Storm Bret. We are monitoring that other tropical disturbance, though, off to the east of Bret. Here it is. It still has a high chance for development over the next 2 to 7 days, a 70 to 80% shot for development. It is an elongated area of low pressure, basically, and it is pushing off to the west-northwest around 10 to 15 miles per hour. Currently 30 mile per hour wind, so it's close to being a tropical depression already, but not quite. So we will monitor that one closely, and of course that tropical disturbance that is still in the eastern Atlantic, still close to the west coast of Africa. So this is fairly abnormal for this time of the year. Normally we don't get this much tropical activity out in the Atlantic because usually the sea surface temperatures are not warm enough. We usually have most of the action developing in June across the Gulf of Mexico, down into the western and central portions of the Caribbean, and also over into the west and southwestern portions of the Atlantic. That's usually where we see the majority of our tropical cyclones developing in June. But because the waters out in the Atlantic are so incredibly warm right now, we've got those tropical waves developing one after the next, and that means that it will likely stay pretty active. We've got very warm sea surface temps as well, like bath water out there in the Gulf, out in the Caribbean, and that extends out into the Atlantic as well. So it will likely be the scenario where we'll have more named storms over the next week. We could actually have Cindy and Dawn over the next 2 to 7 days. So we will be monitoring those 2 additional tropical waves out in the Atlantic for further development. Of course, these are the remainder of the names. We've got 21 names on the list this year, and of course, we've got 4 that have replaced the retired names back from 2017. The retired names, of course, being Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Nate. If you were in Houston in 2017, I'm sure you will never forget the effects of Harvey. Close to 50 inches of rain for parts of the area that, of course, amounted to catastrophic flooding. So hopefully nothing like that for us this season. We've still got a long way to go. We're still in the first 2 to 3 weeks of our hurricane season, and it goes all the way through the end of November. Typically the peak, usually around September 10th, that's usually when we expect those storms to really start to blow up and become more numerous. But of course, at any point during the hurricane season, you can have that tropical depression, tropical storm, or hurricane developing, and you can have multiple systems at once, as we have now. We've got Tropical Storm Bret, and of course, we've got 2 additional tropical waves that we are monitoring. So bottom line, even though I'm not tracking anything moving close to Southeast Texas, you still want to always be prepared. Maybe go over your insurance, make sure you have flood insurance, just go over the details of what type of coverage you have, make sure you have that hurricane disaster preparedness kit, and just make sure that you're ready and you know your evacuation routes if you live in an evacuation zone. Those are some of the things you can do. Also, you need to have our Fox 26 weather app downloaded on your phone. You can get all of the tropical weather updates, forecast cones, our Follow Me feature, and when we do get any potential hurricane watches or warnings, of course, you can find that there as well. Well, that is the latest with what is happening in the tropics right now. We do still have Tropical Storm Bret, but it does not appear that it will hold together long enough to impact the Houston area. So good news for us, but not so great news for parts of the Lesser Antilles. Of course, I'll be here around the same time tomorrow to update you on our tropics, but that's all I have for you for today. Stay safe out there and have a good evening. Once again, I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Lucia Shade.